Yeah, no, I just feel like we are used to hearing certain types of information and context of China.
Mm.
So my motivation to write this book was to show people that there are also other things, to talk about other topics, just show more like everyday side of China.
Hi everyone, this is Nadia from China Missions, and I have Kaya Kubishka here with me joining this video for our YouTube channel. Kaya has an amazing experiences in China. She lived in Shanghai for a while, she studied in Shanghai for a while, and today she'd like to share her experiences about her life in Shanghai at that time, about her studies in Shanghai, and also about the book that she wrote, which titled I Live in Shanghai, the China You Haven't Seen Before. And other than that, Kaya is also have a YouTube channel where she shares a lot of information about China and about her experiences as well. So yeah, hi Kaya and welcome. I'm glad that you are spending time for us to share your experiences to other people.
No, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Alright, so I noticed that you are a pretty international citizen because you've been to like everywhere. You live in Bangkok, in Denmark, in Poland, in China. Especially about your experiences in China. Can you like share more of your experiences in China and Shanghai, and also how was your experiences studying at Fudan University and also in IFA Paris in Shanghai?
Well, so I moved to China for the first time right after graduating high school. So like 3 months after high school, I went to China, and basically it was very random. It was quite accidental. Like I've never been to China at this point. I didn't know much about China, but I had a friend of a friend that went to Shanghai and apparently had a time of her life. And I remember when I heard that, I didn't even know what, Shanghai looked like. I had no idea, about the skyline, anything. Like, I guess Shanghai is not as popular as many other international cities. Like, even if you've never been to Paris, you've seen Paris in movies, right?
Yeah.
But Shanghai is not exactly the same. Especially back then. I know now it's changing a lot, but back then I had no idea what Shanghai even looked like. So that day I remember I went home and, I looked up Shanghai online and I was like, whoa, like, what is this? This like amazing, crazy city that I didn't even know existed. So I was about to graduate high school. I was planning to go to business school in Copenhagen, where I grew up. So I'm originally Polish, but I grew up in Denmark. And I was just planning to go to business school in Copenhagen, like majority of my friends. But I always felt like it was kind of boring. Like, like I didn't really want to do it, but I was like, I mean, I have to do something. Like I have to go to school somewhere. But I always loved traveling. So I thought, oh my God, Shanghai looks crazy. It looks amazing. I could go to China. And also, I always really wanted to learn another foreign language. So I'm fluent in three languages: Polish, Danish, and English. But I always really wanted to learn another language. And I thought, like, whoa, Chinese, that sounds crazy. I can do that. Now, many years later, I still cannot speak Chinese. I mean, I know some Chinese, but it's difficult to learn. Yeah, my Chinese was definitely much better when I lived in China, because a great thing about China is that like it kind of forces you to speak Chinese, because if you go to a local vegetable shops, people want to speak English, so you're forced to practice Chinese. No, but anyways, back to the story. So I just randomly decided to go to Shanghai, and I was so excited, and I thought like, I will live this great adventure. And then I came to China, and I never been to China before that, and I was like, oh my God, what have I just done? Because obviously, I was young. I've never been to China before. It was like end of August, beginning of September. So it's still very hot in Shanghai, and I was super jet lagged and everything. The crowds in Shanghai, the city is so different than Copenhagen. Like Copenhagen is this like calm, little city compared to Shanghai. So I was definitely very overwhelmed at first. And I didn't expect, before coming to China, I didn't expect that I would struggle so much, because I always, I did travel a lot throughout my whole life, and I've been to many, other countries before and all that. And I felt like I'm this open-minded person and I can take care of myself. And yeah, it was quite funny, because in the beginning, China definitely like overwhelmed me a little too much. But with time, it got better and better. And yeah, eventually I ended up having like the best experience ever. I stayed at Fudan for 1 year and I did the Chinese language program. And yeah, ended up having time of my life and ended up writing a book about it. So, a lot of good things came
Hmm.
out of this year.
You mentioned about being overwhelmed the first time you came to China. I
Mm.
mean, it's totally understandable. You were so young, probably 18 or something, right? You just fresh out of high school. So, what are like the culture shocks, or like what are the things that make you overwhelmed at that time?
Definitely the size of Shanghai. The population of Shanghai is 25 million people. The
Mm.
whole population of Denmark, where I grew up, is 5 million people. So
Oh.
just Shanghai alone is 5 times
Hmm.
Denmark. So that definitely overwhelmed me. And, the crowds and everything. And
Mm.
especially since when I came to Shanghai, I stayed in downtown Shanghai in a hotel. And obviously downtown is crowded. If you just
Mm.
stay in a living area, like a normal residential neighborhood, it's very different. But as a tourist, I think that can also be the same. You come and you stay downtown and you're like, oh my god, China is so crowded. But
Yeah.
of course the truth is that China is not crowded everywhere. But yeah, the crowds overwhelmed me. Communication issues, I didn't know any Chinese. And even like back then, now it's also changing a little, but back then, like, you could not communicate in English. Even in like downtown Shanghai, it was difficult. And
Mm.
when I was doing registration at Fudan, even people who worked there didn't really speak English, or there was usually like, this one person that spoke English and you had to
Yeah.
like stand in the line to talk to that person. So that was difficult. And what else? Food. I mean, I was not really used to like real Chinese food.
Mm.
Yeah, I remember like in the beginning, like the first week in China, I do like Chinese food. I always did. So the first week I was like super happy, like trying all these dishes. And then like second week, third week, and I was like, okay, I cannot have rice 3 times a day anymore. Um, so yeah, even like small things like food was difficult. And I went to Fudan and I lived in a dorm, in student
Mm.
dorm. And Fudan is located sort of in like North Shanghai, so not downtown. And it was also very different there because I didn't really have access to like Western products. And by
Mm.
Western products, I mean like, like bread or whatever, cheese, or you could get some, but these things were very expensive. I remember like Philadelphia used to cost like 50 kwai or something,
Wow.
which for me back then, like being a student, it was like, whoa, that's a lot, like,
Yeah.
getting that. And it's not even a good cheese, for the Philadelphia, it's not a great cheese. um so yeah, stuff like that. And I guess I also felt very lonely in the beginning because I came to China all by myself. I didn't know anyone in
Mm.
China or Shanghai, so I didn't have any friends, and it took me a while to find the right friends.
So in those times of, adjusting with the new life in Shanghai, the new culture, the new food and everything, like I would say people would experience that, right? Even if for people who came from Asia, I mean, I came from another country in Asia and I still experienced culture shock when I first arrived in Beijing at that time. So can you share more about what are the tips, or like maybe what did you do at that time to overcome all those barriers?
Well, number one thing is that you should be prepared for the cultural shock because, as I said, I guess I was young and stupid, and I thought I was like, very adventurous and independent, and I won't have any cultural shock. So I think just knowing that the cultural shock will happen and understanding that you might not appreciate your experience at first, that you might not enjoy yourself at first, and that things will be difficult for you in the beginning, but eventually they will get better. I think just having that understanding would help a lot.
Mhm.
And back then when I went to China for the first time, like YouTube was not even like a big thing like now. So
Yeah.
I think even like watching vlogs of other people who live in China, that would help a lot. But back then, like, I didn't have that. So definitely do your research and prepare, like watch vlogs, read books, blogs, whatever. Like do your research. Don't underestimate China. I always say that I kind of underestimated China and my own abilities. So that's number one. Number two, I think when you get to China, so what I did was that I forced myself to go out every single day. And most of the time, like, you come to China not just to chill, like you go to school or you work. So you are obviously tired at the end of the day. But even if I was tired, I would force myself to go out for a walk, just like a half an hour walk around my neighborhood. And I think it did a lot because it kind of like, I don't know, you were getting used to everything. You were
Yeah.
looking at stuff and watching people. And I remember having these like moments where I was still very overwhelmed and I didn't necessarily enjoy my experience, but I would go to like a park and I would see like little kids playing with their grandparents or something. And I was like, well, like those are normal people or normal, they're just having normal life here,
Mhm.
just enjoying themselves, and they're behaving like kids and grandparents would behave like anywhere in the world, right? So just seeing people having like casual life and interactions, I think that helps a lot.
What do you like the best about China out of your experiences, out of those years you've lived in China?
Oh, it's hard to say what's like the number one. I think what I like the most is probably the people I met there. I guess
Hmm.
that's kind of an obvious answer, but the thing about China is that not everyone would decide to move to China. If you make this decision, it means that you're probably a very open-minded person, that you're quite adventurous. And a lot of the time, people that I met in China, they all had very interesting stories. So usually those were people who were like, they moved a lot in their
Mm.
childhood, or, speaking like four languages was like a norm between like among my friends in Fudan. So it's a very like interesting, like international, environment. So that's something I really love. I just love Shanghai. I think Shanghai is like the best city ever. Now, honestly, I really do think that. And I've lived in a couple of great cities. Like I've lived in Paris, and I think that especially Paris like really allowed me to appreciate Shanghai even more, because Paris is such a like dream city for so many people.
Mm.
And obviously Paris is great. Like I love Paris. It's a beautiful city, and the culture and everything, that's of course amazing. But it can also be a difficult city to live in. And I think a lot of people like over idealize. Is that even a word? Over idealize?
I
They
think
think
so. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
better than it is. And again, Shanghai is a city that people underestimate. And I really do think it's a great place to live because there's so much happening. You always have something new to do. So many great people from everywhere in the world. And
Hmm.
also people are very like open-minded. Like Chinese people in Shanghai are very like open to new idea, open to young people having fresh new ideas and like doing things. So yeah, I really like that.
Hmm. Cool. Yeah, I mean, it sounds exciting and it's a lot in the beginning, right? For sure.
Mhm.
I mean, you came
Yeah.
all the way from Poland, you came all the way from Europe to Asia. It's a huge change for you. There's always something good about it, right?
Yeah, no, you just have to get through that first difficult
Mm-hmm.
stage. And what I've learned later on, because later on, as I said, I moved to Paris and Bangkok, I kind of learned that no matter how old you get, or, it's always difficult. Of course, I think the first move that I did to Shanghai was the most difficult because I was the youngest, and, I just didn't have the experience that I have
Mm.
now moving to other countries. But still, every time I would move, even to like, yeah, Paris, which France is obviously not a culture that different from my own, but it's always difficult. So you just
Mm-hmm.
have to get through that first stage, and then most of the time you always end up having a great experience.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned about your experiences studying in Fudan University. So can you please explain more of it? Like, I know that you studied a Chinese language program, but how was your experience? How was your overall experience there? And what did you achieve after a year of studying Chinese language there? Because I know you started from zero, right?
Yeah. I started from zero. Overall, I would definitely recommend Fudan to anyone, but I guess that's kind of obvious. Fudan is one of the best schools in
Yeah.
China, so I was very lucky to go there, and I love Fudan. I love the campus. Fudan has a great campus. It's like very green, and it's basically like, a little village inside of the city where,
Mm-hmm.
people bike around, and you can get whatever you need on the campus or around the campus. So it really has a great student life. There are a lot of international students at Fudan, which is also great because it's easy to make friends, especially in the beginning when you don't know Chinese. Yeah, so I did, as you said, I did 1 year Chinese language program, and after 1 year, less than 1 year, I passed HSK free. So yeah, that's what I got out of it. I think if I would have to, like after a full year, I'm not sure if I could pass HSK 4. Maybe if I would study harder than I did. I did study, but you know, there are also so many other things to do in Shanghai. So I was also definitely enjoying my life.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, like studying Chinese was also difficult for me. It never really got easy. I guess some people are more talented maybe to like learn a new language than I am. I had like 4 classes of Chinese every single day, and we had like listening classes, writing classes, and then overall class overall, and yeah, I mean, 4 hours per day was quite a lot. What's also important to mention is that the 4 hours you spend in class won't give you anything if you don't come home and spend another couple of hours studying. Especially with writing Chinese, since Chinese, well, since it's a different alphabet, or it's not an alphabet, but since you have to learn characters, you need to do it by yourself. You won't be able to learn that in class. So it definitely takes a lot of like time and self-discipline and dedication.
And then you mentioned about, the international communities at Fudan University. So how was the student life during your time in Shanghai, or like how's the Shanghai life itself?
So the student life at Fudan was amazing. That was probably like the best part of my experience. One of the best
Mm-hmm.
part of my experience. Like, there's so many great parts. That's the thing. It's difficult to choose one. But yeah, student life was amazing. As I said, there are a lot of international students at Fudan, probably around 2 or 3,000 when I went there. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, you don't even know everyone. And I lived at the dorm. So the way it worked at Fudan back then, I think it still works like that, is that there are Chinese dorms and then international students dorms, and they're next to each other. So as a foreign student, you had to stay in the international students dorm, which was also okay because it allowed you to meet other foreigners. And since we were all in China alone, people were very open to making new friends. The disadvantage is, of course, that you know you really had to make effort to meet
Mm-hmm.
Chinese students or like to make Chinese friends. But yeah, overall, living in the international students dorm was really fun. Yeah, we had a really great experience, and like as I said, people were really open to, you know, doing things and experiencing things, and it was very normal if you like had a day off or a weekend that everyone wanted to like go and explore Shanghai. Obviously Shanghai is huge and there's so many things to explore, like different neighborhoods, like art galleries, exhibitions, or festivals, like music festivals, art festivals. There's always something happening and people are always like up for it. We also traveled a bit around China. That was also amazing. There's so many places to see in China. So yeah, I mean, China really has everything, like, you know, from the
Yeah.
mountain, deserts, and sea. So
Which city have you been in China? I mean, when you travel around?
I've been to Hangzhou, Suzhou, Nanjing, so all the cities near
Yeah.
Shanghai.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great thing about Shanghai or in China in general is that like there are these fast trains everywhere. So the cities are very well connected and you can
Mm-hmm.
get to another city that is like 500 kilometers away in like 2 hours. And train tickets are very affordable. Well, I've been to Beijing obviously as well. I've been to Shenzhen, Guilin, and I think actually that's pretty much it.
I
Yeah,
think,
so that's like,
wow.
I don't know, 6 different places. So it's not that
Yeah.
much. But yeah, next, my dream is to just go to China for like 2 or 3 months and just travel all around the country, just focus on traveling.
Yeah. I mean, it's so big. I think it's like you will
Yeah,
definitely need a lot of time to travel the whole country, right?
yeah, definitely. When
Yeah.
we went from Shanghai to Guilin by train, it took like 20 hours or
By
more.
train.
Yeah,
How exciting.
yeah, it was quite an experience.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, and then Guilin was like, I think it was quite far, right? It was down in south part of China, and it's
It's
definitely
so
different ambience as well, different weather compared to Shanghai.
yes, very different. But also, I mean, really beautiful. Not that I saw that, like I also It's kind of a funny experience because I went there for a spring break from
Mm-hmm.
Fudan. So during this in spring, Fudan organized these trips for foreign students, and we could choose from like 8 different places around China and go on a like 5-day long trips, and they're very like affordable. So it was cool, and like we had like everything was planned, like the
Mm-hmm.
hotel and transport and food. So we just had to go. And I went to Guilin, and it was a very interesting experience because we went there during rainy season, which is something you should
Oh,
definitely not do. I don't know
exactly.
why. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know why I haven't thought about it. That's the thing. You're an experience. Like nowadays, after living in Asia for a while, I know that you have to be careful with the rainy season.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a
Yeah.
joke. In Europe, there's no such a thing as rainy season. It just rains all the time. So yeah, I didn't know, but like basically we didn't see anything because the weather was so bad. Like it was so foggy and it was
Mm-hmm.
pouring rain all the time. But Guilin is a really beautiful place. It's like one of the
Mm-hmm.
most beautiful places in China.
What's your favorite one out of the 6 cities you've been to?
Well,
I mean,
obviously Shanghai, but
yeah, except
but
Shanghai.
you know what I really love? Shenzhen. And
Mm.
I was even considering doing my master's in Shenzhen. I did not end up doing it, but I went to Shenzhen for a couple of days to check it out, to see the school, and I was shocked. It was again sort of the same thing that I had with Shanghai years back, where, even after living in China, when I first moved to Shanghai, no one was talking about Shenzhen. Like, I don't think
Mm.
I've ever even heard the name of the city, which is funny to think about because nowadays you hear Shenzhen everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like now it became almost like I guess maybe it is the third biggest, maybe not the biggest, but one of the most popular cities for sure in
Mm.
China. And it's truly an amazing city. It's quite different from Shanghai in a way that it's very new, but also since it's been just like built recently in the last 20 years, like it's very green, it's very livable. Like there are parks and like you can go hiking, and then there's beach. And so yeah, Shenzhen is somewhere where I would like actually consider living if I ever got a chance.
Yeah. Shenzhen is definitely on my next bucket list then.
Should go. It's so nice.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, Hangzhou. I
Mm.
was also positively surprised by Hangzhou with the lake and everything. That's great.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any advice specifically for those who are thinking to move to China or like to study in China maybe?
I think well, first of all, China is so big. So your experience is going to be very different depending to which city you go to. So I
Mm-hmm.
think before you decide to go, you should really think, what do you want out of your experience? And I think it's also okay to like understand that there is no right and wrong. If you really care about learning Chinese and you don't want to hang out with other foreigners, then maybe you shouldn't go to Beijing or Shanghai. You should just go somewhere else, right?
Mm.
But then if you want to meet other foreigners and hang out with like international students, then Shanghai, Beijing would be a great option for you. And
Mm.
as I said, I really think it's important to like emphasize that there is no right and wrong, because I feel like sometimes people are always very like criticizing people who foreigners in China who like hang out with other foreigners or are in the foreign bubble. And of course, being in the foreign bubble, that's not great. But I also think it's interesting to go to China and meet people from other countries. Like that was one of the best thing for me. Like when I came to Shanghai, I've never met anyone from like Malaysia, let's say.
Mm.
And then in Shanghai, I had this like really good friend who's a good friend of mine until this day from Malaysia, or I had a friend from Brunei. Like you meet so many people from even countries that you knew nothing about. And that's also great that China can be this place where you not only learn about China and Chinese culture. Yeah, sure
Mm-hmm.
you do, no matter where you go. Even if you go to Shanghai, you obviously do that too, but you also learn a lot about other places and other cultures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure that you have also shared about this on your book that you recently published, which titled I Live in Shanghai, the China You Haven't Seen Before. So I'm really curious, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, yeah, China inspired me to write this book. Well, the thing is that I realized very quickly that whenever I would talk to my friends and be like, when I lived in China, and I would tell them like about my life and all the, nightlife in Shanghai is amazing and all these interesting people I'm meeting, people would always be like kind of surprised And I've realized that a lot of people have a very like, I would say almost wrong or
Mm.
inaccurate image of what life in China is like. A lot of people think that, well, living in China is not necessarily something cool or desirable,
Mm-hmm.
but my like motivation with this book was to show people that like living life in China can be pretty cool and can be very, very interesting. That's why I wanted to show people like China they haven't seen before, you know, and talk about the everyday life in China, show people what is it like to be a young person, a foreigner, but also, you know, share stories of Chinese people and both foreigners living in China. I kind of lost my my thought. I have like so much to say, especially about the book. So yeah, no, I just feel like we are used to hearing a certain types of information, or we're
Yeah.
used to talking about certain types of
Stereotypes.
yeah, in context of China.
Mm.
So my motivation to write this book was to show people that there are also other things, you know, to talk about other topics, just show more like everyday side of China. What is like the everyday life in China like?
Mm-hmm.
And I also felt like there was a gap in the market because usually books written about China are often written by older people,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah.
I guess in general that's a thing. Older people often read books, but there was no book on the market which talked about what is it like to be a student in China, a young person moving to China.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely felt like I had a lot to say there. And I also feel like, you know, my experience moving to China and having such a hard time in the beginning also really inspired me to like help other people that will be in my position, because I think if I would read a book like this, I would definitely be way more prepared for what's about to
Mm.
come than I was when I moved there by myself. And I think, you know, being more prepared and like knowing, you know, what you should expect will help people to enjoy their experience faster than I did. It doesn't necessarily have to, you know, take all these months of trying to figure out everything by yourself. And then also, I feel like there's stuff that I couldn't really find anywhere. Information about, for
Mm.
example, like what is it like to be a young person partying in China? You know, what is a
Yeah. Yeah.
nightlife in Shanghai like? Just typical things that like young people do. So I also wanted to write about that.
Yeah, because I think a lot of those information might be available in Chinese. If you search it on Baidu, for example, it is available. But for us foreigners with a little knowledge of Chinese language, it's gonna be very difficult to find all those informations you need just to get you settled with your new life in China, right? So I think your
Yeah.
book will be definitely helpful for, for the newcomers who are new to the China life. So how
Yeah.
do like where can people buy this book?
They can buy it on Amazon. It's called I Lived in Shanghai by Kaya Kubitska. It's available on Amazon, and maybe we can also link it in the description
Yeah,
of this video.
definitely,
And you
definitely.
can get it as an ebook and in paper format. I have it here with me. I can show you. That's the paper,
Mm-hmm.
that paper format. So yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be an exciting book for us, for people who have never been to China before, especially for those who have, have a lot of stereotypes and everything. Because often, even when I'm talking to my fellow Indonesian friends or Indonesian family, people will always have a certain stereotypes about China. And then only
Hmm.
if we arrive to China, only if we experience it by ourselves, then we know those stereotypes are not necessarily true. Then we
Yeah.
know China is not like whatever the media is talking about. China is not like whatever other people is talking about. It's way different, and it's always give us an exciting experiences. And I do agree with you. Different people would have different experiences about China. It's gonna be a different
Yeah.
one, but it's always an exciting one as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. And there are a lot of things, like a lot of misconceptions, as you said, and some are
Mm.
like partly true, but not, you know, entirely true. For
Yeah.
example, people always ask me if people would take pictures with me when I lived in China.
Hmm.
And I'm always like, yes, but that happens only when you're in smaller cities. It
Yeah.
never happens in Shanghai. Nobody comes to you and wants to take a picture of you in Shanghai. And if it happens, then it happens like at the Bound or in a temple where there
Mm.
are tourists, like
Yeah.
Chinese tourists from other parts of China. So, you know, there are a lot of things like that that are partly true, but then also
Hmm.
not really.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just think in general, like Shanghai, China are one of these places that people don't know that much about yet.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think some people really underestimate it. Some people don't really know. For example, I don't think the majority of people know that Shanghai is such a cool city. So
Yeah.
yeah, I really wanted to show people that. I had such a great time living in Shanghai, and it really changed so much in my life. And it's a place where I see myself living again eventually for sure. So yeah, I want to share that with the world and show people how cool it can be.
Has the experience living in China bring the benefits for your next chapters of life?
It definitely makes you more open-minded. It teaches you to like not not judge book by its cover.
Mm,
Although like yeah, we all judge books by its cover. It's also natural. But it reminds you that, not everything is what it seems at first. Sometimes we judge things because we've heard a lot of things or we have certain, ideas in our head. So it's important to, experience things by yourself and make up your own mind. And I think China also taught me to be more brave and like adventurous because obviously moving to China as a Westerner is not easy. So once you did that, you sort of feel like you can do it all. Like at
yeah.
this point, I feel like I can move anywhere, it's fine. I mean, like, I know I will be fine eventually. Even if I won't be fine in the beginning, eventually everything will be okay. And that, I think that, feeling that confidence within yourself, I think that's a great thing. So
Hmm.
China definitely made me more confident. Like I mean, I definitely really, had to grow up fast when I moved there. um yeah, it just like also kind of, I know it sounds silly, like this is something I really tried to explain in my book, but I think people are just people everywhere. And, we tend to really divide people into different like nations. And, these people from this religion want this, and people from this place
Mm,
want this. But at the end of the day, when you really think about it, like we're all the same. We have more in common than we have, well, not in common,
yeah.
if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. The final question. I know this is probably not the right time for people to come because it's the pandemic still, but this video would be useful in the future when the border is back open again and then people can just travel internationally again and they are ready to travel abroad to China or wherever they want to go. Do you have any advice? Maybe you can put it in a more general form as well, not necessarily for people who are moving to China, but also for people who are moving from their comfort zone in their home country to like another country where everything is new for them.
Yeah, I guess my main advice would just give it time. Just like remind yourself every single day that things will eventually get better. I think that's how it always worked for me. Like beginnings are hard and change is always hard. I think that's something we should remind ourselves that like as human being, it's like our nature to feel uncomfortable whenever we're changing something. It can be as small as changing a job or moving to a different city in our own
Hmm.
country. Like change is just always hard, and we often have tendency to like idealize the past. So whenever we think about the past, like we forget with time, we also forget about a lot of the bad things, and we always think that, oh, the past was so much better, right? So I think that's something also I struggle with a lot, that I always like think about like, oh, in the past it was so great. Or another thing is that I always think about the future. So I think like in general, a good advice is to just like try to be present in the moment. Of course it's difficult, but yeah, try to not focus too much on the past and on the future, and just be in the moment.
Right. Yeah. What a nice piece of advice. And again, thanks, Kaya, for giving the time for this interview with you. So we get to know more about your experiences in Shanghai and also about your book, which titled I Live in Shanghai, the China you haven't seen before. And obviously, people can get it easily on Amazon. You can just type it on Amazon and get it. Yeah. You can also check out Kaya's YouTube channel. It's going to be written on the description box as well. Thanks, Kaya, again.
It was really lovely talking to you.
Thank you.